What's happening, Saints fans? Hope y'all are having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Saints Now by Chat Sports. In today's show, we're going to talk about some trade targets, specifically some veteran cornerbacks, Jalen Ramsey and Jaire Alexander, two names that have had a lot of trade rumors surrounding their respective teams and themselves. So we're going to dive into whether or not it makes sense for the Saints to indulge and go and trade for one of these superstars. Now, really fast, I want to get you updated on the road to 50K. We're really on the road to 44K, but the big goal, it's 50K. We're chipping away. I say it every single video. Right now, we're 469 very nice subscribers away from 44,000. Thank you guys for helping us get across 43,500. But let's keep this ball rolling. Let's keep this thing moving and grooving until we get to 50,000 subscribers. Free Saints content by fans, for fans. What more could you ask? So let's talk about Jalen Ramsey first. I want to discuss this because I do believe the New Orleans Saints are a team that needs to get a cornerback. They're a team that I believe could really benefit from having a veteran defensive back. One more veteran defensive back could really make me feel a lot better about the current Saints defense. And I think that this is a defensive back group that is pretty solid. And I think that this is a defensive back group that has the potential to grow. But when you add in a player like Jalen Ramsey, it only makes life better. And this note right here is really interesting. Miami and Ramsey do 25.1 fully guaranteed this season. They could be parting ways. The New Orleans Saints right now, they could try to make it work financially if they wanted to. I mean, trying to take an updated look at the Saints cap space. According to Over the Cap, they have $27 million in spending. So you could make that work. That's interesting to think about. And I also will say this, when it comes to Jalen Ramsey, there's ties to the New Orleans Saints. Remember, the New Orleans Saints hired Brandon Staley to be their defensive coordinator. The last time he held that same position was when he was with the Los Angeles Rams, and they ended up winning a Super Bowl. And Jalen Ramsey, he said about Brandon Staley, the best defensive coordinator that I've ever had for sure in the NFL. So there's clearly a lot of respect from Ramsey to Staley. But the respect doesn't end there. It's reciprocated from Staley to Ramsey because Staley credits Jalen Ramsey for being one of the players that helped him get a head coaching job in the National Football League. And look, Jalen Ramsey at one point in time was one of the best defensive players, arguably, in the entire National Football League. But, however, he is a player who some are saying are washed up. Some are saying he is not as good as he used to be. Some are saying he's a shell of the player he once was. Last year for the Dolphins, 60 tackles, 6 for a loss, 11 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. I got to say, I'm not too disappointed in that production. 11 pass breakups is really nice. However, this is also a player just a couple of seasons ago that almost had 20 and 4 interceptions. So, in terms of numbers for Jalen Ramsey, sure, they're down. And I'll say this, when it comes to the New Orleans Saints specifically, I'm open to trading for Jalen Ramsey. I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely the hell not. I understand the concerns of he's washed, he's old, he's expensive, we want to get younger, we want to get cheaper. I get all that. But I'm also okay with bringing in another quality veteran that's been successful in our coach's system before and putting him back in that system, just in a different location. I think that that's not a bad move to explore. This defensive back group for New Orleans has some decent depth. And I think that the starters are solid. I'm a big fan of Justin Reed. I cannot wait to see him play on Sundays in the black and gold. I also really like Tyrann Mathieu. I'm a huge fan of Alontae Taylor. But the cornerbacks are where things get a little concerning for me. Isaac Yiadom, I think he's fine, but he's coming off a down year in San Francisco. Whereas when he was in New Orleans, he actually was playing at a very high level. Kool-Aid McKinstry, he's a second-year player, showed some good things, but definitely needs more development. And if you were to trade for Jalen Ramsey, I'm not going to sit here and limit him to just a cornerback. I would also argue you could line him up as a safety, and honestly, I would say that's probably the best way to go here. And maybe you're sitting here being like, why would you trade for a backup safety? Jalen Ramsey's not a backup, blah, blah, blah. I get that. I understand that. But if you had Jalen Ramsey on the defense and if he's on the roster, I feel much better about the defensive back group as a whole because you could have any combination of your 5 best defensive backs on the field. I mean, Jalen Ramsey could play opposite of Kool-Aid McKinstry. He could play opposite of Isaac Yiadom. But you could also, if you need to take Tyrann Mathieu out, put him back at safety. Or maybe have him line up in the nickel. Or maybe have him line up in Justin Reed's position. My point being, I think that the Saints shouldn't close themselves off to it, but don't go get fleeced. Don't go and overpay. Don't go and get absolutely waxed and give away a ton of draft capital, because quite frankly, it's a player that I like and that he's a good name, but you don't need to overpay him. And for the Saints, they are a team that needs to get younger, that needs to get more modern. And, I just think that the Saints shouldn't overpay. Go do it, but don't go and mortgage the future of your team and impact the future. Negatively, I should say. Now, for the next team odds, the New Orleans Saints, they're top 10, top 12-ish. Like, they're pretty low on the odds, but they're in the top half. These were the more likely odds, though. Raiders, Cardinals, Cowboys, Niners, all were ahead. So were the Buccaneers. Another team to look out for is the Falcons. So we'll have to see what happens. Jalen Ramsey is a player who has ties to the Saints due to Brandon Staley. But we also know that Jalen Ramsey is not the player he once was. So I think that it's a very fair thing to say, I want nothing to do with him. So I'm going to kick it to you, and I'm going to ask you the question. Would you trade for Jalen Ramsey? If you would, type trade. If you would not, type pass. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. This will be the pinned comment. So when you are going through and watching the video, if at any point a YouTube ad break pops up, just scroll down, share your thoughts. Heck, even during this ad break right here, I want you to share your thoughts about Jalen Ramsey. Now, while you're commenting about whether or not you would trade for Jalen Ramsey, I got to encourage you to check out the Game Time app. The link is actually replied to the pinned comment. It's also in the comments and description of this video as a standalone link. So I highly encourage you to check it out. Game Time is the best ticketing app in the whole wide world, and watching sports with your friends is always a blast, but nothing truly matches the hype of being in attendance. So don't miss out on any big moments across sports with the Game Time app. And they don't just stop at sports. It's the best ticketing app for concerts, comedy shows, theater, and other live events too. Game Time specializes in last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% when buying last-minute tickets to live events in your area. And they also highlight super deals. These are the tickets that are the best value for events. So whenever you're looking to get a super deal, you can have some super savings thanks to Game Time. They also have all-in pricing, seat views, and the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download Game Time today, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But once again, redeem code CHATSPORTS when you download the Game Time app to get $20 off your first purchase. You can go to Jazz Fest. You can go to LSU baseball. You can go to see the Saints play. I don't care what you want to go do. Just make sure you go see live events with the Game Time app. Get a gift. Get your boys a fun thing to do on a trip. Get your girlfriend a nice little date night. Just do it with Game Time. Link is in the comments and description of this video. Shout out to Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, I want to talk about Jaire Alexander now. And I do understand that there are some reports out there that, there's not the imminent trade here. So that's kind of where this is an interesting conversation. I don't know if I would trade for Jaire Alexander, but if he becomes available as a free agent, that's something that becomes much more intriguing. They have received trade interest. Green Bay has been getting calls about their cornerback, but a deal is not imminent. And I believe that the goal is to get done before the NFL draft. So that way the Packers can use those picks this year. If he's not traded by the 2025 NFL draft, I talked to my guy, Joey Peterson. He's the host here of our Packers channel by Chat Sports. He said that he expects the Packers to cut Jaire Alexander if he is not traded by the NFL draft. And like we mentioned for Jalen Ramsey, I'll say the same thing for Jaire Alexander. He is a player that could fill a position of need, which is a cornerback, but specifically a veteran. The best ability, though, Lopez, is what? Availability. So let's talk about an injury-plagued player because, in 2022, this is a guy who was a very, very good football player. But in 2021, 4 games played. In 2023, 7 games played. In 2024, 7 games played. So when I look back at the 2022 production, I think, wow, that's a player who at one point in time was a dog. That's a player at one point in time was responsible for 5 interceptions and 14 pass breakups. Since then, he's had 2 interceptions and 13 pass breakups. Just not what you want to see. Last year, in 2024, he had a grand total of 7 pass breakups. He had 16 tackles and 2 interceptions. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say like he's a bad football player, but I just want to see the Saints add another cornerback because I think that that's a position in need. Again, if it's a trade, maybe this is a conversation I'm not really willing to do. But if it's a free agency acquisition because he's cut, that's something I'm definitely interested in. Now, Jaire Alexander, there's some interesting context from Tom Silverstein that I want to share with you guys. Since most of the league knows that the Packers don't intend to keep Jaire Alexander, they aren't hurrying to make a deal, figuring he will eventually be cut. Alexander is a vested veteran, so he is not subject to waivers and can negotiate with whomever he likes if he's cut. My big fear with Jaire Alexander is that this is Marshon Lattimore 2.0. Meaning he's a very quality, very productive, very good cornerback that misses a lot of time. And I don't want the Saints to be stuck in that problem again. Of course, you can't always control injuries. That's something that just happens in life. However, I am a believer that the New Orleans Saints need to be smart. And I'm also a believer that the Saints need to draft a cornerback by pick 131, which is your second in the 4th round. Because you don't have a 5th round pick. You have 1 in the 6th, 2 in the 7th. You have 6. You have 6 selections in the top 150. 1 in the 1st, 1 in the 2nd, 2 in the 3rd, 2 in the 4th. You have really good opportunity to add a quality cornerback by pick 131. So I would almost argue this is a smarter route than going to trade for a Jalen Ramsey or a Jaire Alexander. I think any one of these players would be an excellent selection. Not all of them are 1st-round players. Not all of them are 2nd-round players. Not all of them are day 3 picks. You have a little bit of everything here. And I would be very happy if the Saints were able to pull off one of these players in the draft. The Saints have a need at cornerback. There is no question about it. So in my personal opinion, going and trading for a Jalen Ramsey or a Jaire Alexander, sure, it's fun. The name is there. But you have to build some youth. You have to add some talent, and you got to get cheaper. So although I'm interested in those other players, you can convince me to go and do that. You also cannot leave the draft without a cornerback as a priority pick. So I want you to answer the question, who should the Saints draft at the cornerback position? We gave you 10 names to look at. If you need to, just rewind real quick and look back at them. But let me know, who's the cornerback you want the Saints to draft? And guys, I put a lot of content out on social media. I put all of my stuff actually out on Instagram and on Twitter before I get to YouTube. So if you want to hit me up, links are available in the comments and description of this video. Instagram and X and TikTok. Feel free to hit your boy up on all 3 platforms. Saints fans, I really appreciate y'all for making us a part of your day. A fun little bit of content around some trade rumors. Y'all stay golden, and we'll see you next time.